over the last couple of years, industrial policy has been like the driving force to onshore and in some cases, friend-shore semiconductor manufacturing, right? And we've seen this with the $40 billion CHIPS Act in America, the $10 billion India Semiconductor Mission. So just keeping this in mind and with this backdrop, is it fair to assume that chip manufacturing cannot stand on its own 2 feet and really needs active and regular government intervention, or like framed another way, like will the drive for profits really matter when it comes to chip manufacturing if the government is regularly going to step in and just replenish the subsidy pot?
I think it depends on what each industry looks at. I think this should be looked at as a tailwind, not as a crutch, right?
Mm,
So the PLIs and DLIs are needed to kickstart the ecosystem, act as a catalyst. By itself, the government can do as much, right? It's us as entrepreneurs and the rest of the ecosystem that has to pull through. So if you look at each country's semiconductor journey, other than the US where this originated, notable being Taiwan and in Samsung, the initial seed, or rather for a large period of time, the government did provide an incubation until it became big enough. And then once it became big enough, it actually went through. They stopped depending on the government. But I still believe they still do get some subsidies, not as much as they did earlier. But these are all long cycles, right?
mm,
You cannot celebrate or sulk because nothing happens in 2 years. Give it time, right? I mean, even the manufacturing time cycle for it to actually stabilize and start making profits is at least 5-6 years. It will happen. We have to take a 15-20 year view, right? And once you do that, then you will start to see local industries on their own start to invest in these businesses. Unfortunately, in India, what I have seen, investors typically like cash flow businesses.
mm,
It could be a negative cash flow, right? Most of our deliver stuff in 2 minutes, or I don't know what, next they would come up delivery in 30 seconds. Is based on business model innovation. Is based on cash flows. Most of their cash flows are negative. Whereas in a business like semiconductors, the gestation period for a cash flow is very long, right? It takes 15 years, sometimes 10 years. It took us 9 years before we made any revenues in Sankhya, right? So those businesses are something that investors don't understand, and that's why the government has to step in to an
mm,
extent, right? And this is extremely strategic because if one of those 10-minute delivery or food delivery companies go down, nothing is going to happen to the country. But
mm.
Tata Motors goes down, or say Mahindra's goes down, there's a huge impact on your economy. There's an impact on, there's a secondary and tertiary impact on the economy. And these businesses are very important, right? And that's why there's a distinction between deep tech and tech now, right? Because those are tech-enabled businesses. These deep tech businesses are the foundational core of the 21st century GDP, I believe.
Right, but when it comes to manufacturing, is it realistic to believe that a startup can play an active role in chip manufacturing? I'm guessing like you do need like large industries or like large players that have pedigree in manufacturing to, get into this space, like Tata has done, right?
Absolutely,
And like
absolutely,
HCL is
absolutely.
doing now as well.
Yes, yes. It does need. See, building a fab has got a lot to do more with efficiencies, with land, with construction, than with technological disruptions, right? So
Right.
while the real technological disruptions in semiconductor manufacturing come in from the tool vendors like ASML and all of that. But ASML spent $7 billion or $10 billion before they perfected the EUV
Hmm.
lithography. Who has the patience in India? You tell me to spend $7 billion, but the investors in India will put $7 billion in an e-commerce company to see it through, right? It's not the
Hmm.
money; it's the mindset. There's enough
Hmm.
money out in the market, but they don't believe that those returns are consummate, right? And also, you have to look at it, in psychology, there's this availability bias. They've seen, some e-commerce companies, initially it was the IT companies that succeeded, so a lot of IT companies got funded. Then there was the e-commerce companies that came in, then they got funded. And now that there is a lot of media awareness, and the fact that we are having this interview also, is also the reason why the macro environment has changed. I believe in the coming years they will come and invest in semiconductors as well, and it's happening. In fact, when we raised money from Intel Capital, and I raised money from Intel Capital and General Motors, so nobody in India was
Mm,
willing to even put money in us at that time, other than angels, right? So there was practically no mention of it, or and at that time it was really difficult. Now it's much more easier to raise money for semiconductors also. Not as
mm.
easy as say some other ideas, but easier than say 10 years ago.